Hello, lovelies! Welcome to the crystal grid portion of your wisdom kit. I'm Hollie Hope, and I'm so grateful that you have chosen to take a step in towards your emotional empowerment and help to combat some of the emotions that have been rising up that have been on the negative side with a positive one. So in this video, we are going to put together our crystal grid. So I'm going to be sharing just a few things and information from the grid and information on your crystals and how to place them. Now, if you feel called to place them a different way than what I suggest, always go with your intuition. If you feel like there's things you want to add or different elements, please, please, please absolutely add those elements. Each of them are very important and very much part of this journey together. So we will be touching base on all 4 of the elements as well. So if you have objects that you would like to add to your grid, you can. So objects for air would be things like feathers or sometimes even leaves because the wind blows those. I even sometimes will use the dandelions with the puffy seeds, that you blow a wish. You can use those. For water, you can have a small chalice of water or even extra blue crystals. You're going to have your lapis, which represents the water as well. And there's also water painted on your grid. For earth, you can do dirt. You can do a stick, something, or even a rock, something that connects you to that earth element. And for fire, I love fire. You can obviously do crystals. We're going to have the black obsidian for that, but you can also add in something different if you would like. And usually this fire element is handled by lighting a candle at your crystal grid. So I would recommend that as well if you feel like you need that. Okay, so to get started, you are going to need your crystal grid. You're going to need all of the crystals that came in your kit. So your zebra amber, your beautiful opal, and all of your crystal chips. There's 4 different sets of them: the lapis, the garnet, the clear quartz, and the black obsidian. I also recommend your flower essence. It's the light in the darkness. You're going to take and put a few drops of that flower essence underneath your tongue and let it sit there. You can also do this grid in advance to doing your cacao ceremony. In the cacao ceremony, it's nice to have an altar or an intention set up, and this crystal grid is the perfect vehicle for that. So that is an option. You can also add in your beautiful King Solomon anointing oil. So here's mine. Ta-da! So with this anointing oil, you'll want to place it on objects that you want to connect with. So because we're connecting with all of the parts of our body, you're going to start by putting some at the very top of your head. You're going to put some at your heart center. Put some at your navel. And you can either put it at the bottom of your feet or below your back by your tailbone. So whichever feels good and aligned to you. You can't really do this wrong. So if you want to just coat it all over your body and put it on all your chakra points, you absolutely can. What this will do is it helps to open up your clarity and open up your heart space and that wisdom, that's the inner wisdom coming through. Okay, so first we're going to start with a little bit on the grid itself. So obviously it's symbolic because it's a rose. And the rose is very interesting because the rose isn't always just a sweet smelling, soft, delicate, lovely thing that everybody loves. It actually starts out green and pokey and sharp. So it has all of its protection already in place before it chooses to bloom. So remembering that when it comes to your wisdom, if there's an area that you're not protecting yourself in, definitely write a note and pay attention to the areas where you might not be safe. We do have the black obsidian we will be putting on the crystal grid, but you'll want to make sure that you're paying attention to what wisdom inside is telling me that I'm not safe, or what wisdom inside is telling me to do something so I can remain safe. Those are going to be really good questions to ask. And just like all of these videos, you always want to have like a notebook or something that you can scratch ideas on while you're going through, because thoughts and downloads come quite often. And a lot of times it feels like it's just our imagination, but the reality is it's information coming through. And sometimes we think it's our imagination because it's not our normal thought process, or maybe it is your normal thought process, so you throw it away because you get it all the time. Either way, sometimes by writing it down, it clears up the space so that more wisdom can flow. a lot of times I'll be doing something completely different when all of a sudden the answer I needed finally comes through. So these intentions are where we set the intention, we ask the question. They may come through in this moment, or they may come through when your brain is finally quiet enough. For me, a lot of times the brain is quiet when I'm doing meditation, where I'm counting my breath and focusing on that, so I can't really think about other things. Or most of the time, it's in places like yoga, running, or yard work, cleaning house, doing something else where my body is so busy that it doesn't really pay attention to what it's thinking about, because we're focused on the non-deep thinking thoughts. And that's all of a sudden when I'll get the idea. So people kind of laugh because I do bring a notebook in when I do yoga, but that's when I get my answers. And I could go, ooh, there's my answer. Okay, just focus on that and remember that. And when I get out, I'll write it down. The key is to write it down right away. And the reason for that is because if I have a thought coming, a download, and it comes through, and then I think, okay, don't forget it, don't forget it, don't forget it, don't forget it, don't forget it. How many more thoughts am I going to get that come through? Probably none, right? Yay, I got one good idea. Yes, in a 90-minute yoga session where if I take that idea and go, ooh, pause, write down this idea, and then I jump back in, I now have emptiness within me to get another idea and another idea and another idea. And so I can get 10 or 15 ideas versus just one, because I don't have to use that space to remember. So asking yourself, is there somewhere in my life that I am holding space that doesn't need to be held, that's causing busyness in my mind or busyness in my body? Or am I just tired and hangry and I really need to do some self-care before I can dive into this deep wisdom and knowing? These are questions that it's really okay to ask, because we are humans and we expect ourselves to be non-humans so much of the time, right? So the other part of the rose is understanding that we are like that bud. We're tight and we're withheld and we don't really want to open up. But then when the sun comes out, and with enough time and love and nourishment, we bloom. And eventually the old yucky petals start to go, and it's like, oh, I'm not as beautiful because I have these old yucky pieces. Well, ding, 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 pluck them off, right? So what are the areas in our lives that we're maybe needing to pluck off some dead leaves so that the rose looks beautiful and full of bloom? So then the other part that I love that came through in this crystal grid was the women in the center. And so we are going to talk about these. And it's funny because I almost didn't even use this grid. Honestly, I thought, oh no, nobody's going to want this one. And I started to doubt all of my deep knowing wisdom. Somebody needs to do the kit herself. And so I love that Spirit pushed through and said, no, this is the way you're doing it. And it's funny, after the fact, I was like, oh, is that why I put that there? And that's why I put that there. So it's really interesting. The very first crystal we're going to discuss is our beautiful zebra amber. And this is where your black light comes in. And you can notice how fast the color changes. And so this is understanding the very first part of this kit is understanding what lies in the shadows. What is it that we're maybe not seeing within ourselves that needs to be burned away or ignited and magnified? And so this is why on the crystal grid, we're going to place it right at the very top where our fire is, because that's going to ignite a fire of purpose and passion. I love invoking Kali Ma in this one. If you study Hindu goddesses at all, Kali is the Hindu goddess that is depicted holding a baby with a big long red tongue, stepping on somebody's dead body on their head, like, arr. And it's like the mama bear. So she is the one who's going to hold space for justice and burn away anything that doesn't serve. And in that burning and that purging, she's actually creating space for that growth. So asking yourself, what is it within that needs to be ignited and risen? It's interesting with this piece because a lot of this is tied in with womb wisdom, which we didn't necessarily intend when we created it. But Spirit knows better. So amber, especially zebra amber, is often what is used during birth. So it's normally kept around the birth mother. It's placed on the navel space. It helps with protection and with healing and emotional balance. So if you look at anything feminine, that's the emotional balance. And did you know that in your body, you carry DNA from your ancestors, which it's considered the epi gene is what it's called. And it's this squishy little gene on the top of the other genes. It's like kind of like a kidney, and it holds all of the experiences and memories of our ancestors, which means you have access to the powerful side or the shadow side, right? The light or the dark. You can choose the scarcity. And you know, I had a friend the other day who her grandparents were Holocaust survivors. Like, talk about having to overcome and break a lot of chains of information, but they also have powerful wisdom and they know how to overcome. That's already there. So asking yourself, instead of saying, oh, I'm a victim because this is what happened to my grandparents, or, you know, my legacy, the women were practically sold into lots of polygamy and ended up very abused and running away just to be abused by somebody else. And so those male cycles for me is one that exists already in my body. And so I get to break those because I went through the similar cycles as my ancestors. And so now I get to say, oh, we don't do this anymore. And I get to teach my daughters, and I get to take this wisdom and information that's already in my body and share it, even if it's just with you. And you get to stop breaking some cycles. That's a huge gift of wisdom. And so as we're going through this, we're going to be pulling a lot of that knowing and a lot of that energy essence through our body from our womb space, because that is our largest cavity, open space to hold energy in our body. If you think of our pelvis, it's like a big old bowl. So that's obviously why this looks like a part of a woman's body that can hold that wisdom and that space, because there's a lot that exists within there. And it's also especially that fiery passion. So then the next area we're going to talk about is the earth and the moon. So it's a balance of so the moon influences the earth, right? And the earth is also what the moon follows. And with the gravitational pull, and also, you know, the angles of the sun to make it look different, all of those things. So both of them are in a balance and a need for each other. So it's important to remember the balance and the need that we need. What is it that you're needing that you're maybe not getting? What is it that your body is saying you need that you're not getting? What is it that your ancestors have said you don't get to have because you're not special or because you're not like others? That's what we're going to dive into. And you're going to get out your opal stone. And I love this because it goes right here over the earth and the moon as well. And we're getting that out and pulling that in because it has a lot to do with your influence in the world and how you're going to show up and how you're going to either let the world pull you and yank you around, or you're going to stand strong and influence the world. So we have our fiery passion and showing up and being protected and emotional flow. And then we have showing up in balance for the world and the moon and all of the alignment. So this is a type of, it's considered blue opal, but it's also Oregon opal. So it's got both fused together, which I really love. And you don't normally see that. That's why I was like, oh, those have to be there. They also help to promote the highest good for all. So as you're showing up in the world, you're not showing up saying, okay, I'm going to show up the highest good of all, and I'm just going to trigger everybody and be the reason why people have to rise. No, I'd like to be the good. I want to show up in the good and the light and not the shadow. I mean, we've all had moments where we've shown up in the shadow. Maybe make a note of that. But we're showing up in the light as that deep influence. It also enhances all of your metaphysical responses and reactions. So heightening those spiritual gifts, heightening your awareness to receiving information, receiving understanding, receiving cellular memory, and enhancing those pieces that already are there. So it's one that's known as an access point. So if you are having a hard time focusing, this is a really good focuser, because it's almost like it creates a focal funnel, is kind of what I like to call them. And so a lot of times I'll place it on my third eye if I'm trying to like receive from above, or if I'm trying to receive from within, I'll place it right over my womb. And as I lay down and meditate, or even as you're partaking of your cacao, you can put it, just inside your pants so it sits and it's happy and cozy all in there. Or just place it on your grid with your intention of the good you're sharing in the world and how you're going to be the one to influence rather than always being at the mercy of the flow of everything else, right? Okay, speaking of the flow, I love the wild woman. So we're going to do the wild woman next. She's here in the center. And you'll notice the purple spiral. So the purple spiral, purple is the color of royalty, and that third eye, that intuition, and leadership. So these are part of how you are showing up and creating shifts of change, shifts of movement. It's great if you have all the wisdom in the world, but if you don't do anything with it, you never share it, nothing happens, right? It's interesting because Spirit has told me recently in the last few months to share everything as if I'm dying. And I'm like, everything? And it's like, okay, Holly, if you're dying tomorrow, what would you give? What would you share? And I was like, oh, there's so much that I've learned that I haven't even shared. And Spirit's like, and now it's the time to share it. So I'm actually sharing all I can as fast as I can. No, I'm not dying. People always keep asking me that. No, but it's an idea of we don't own any of the information that comes through. Our job is to share it, to communicate it, because then we raise the vibration of all of us. So what you're going to do on this one is you're going to take your wild woman. She's, of course, the redhead. We all have all of them, and I'll go through each of them. So the wild woman is our unbridled and wild essence of ourselves, that primal piece. It's the piece that carries a lot of the DNA that has been suppressed. And so everything that says, hey, this is conformity, actually, I don't like that. Do I quiet the wild woman or do I conform? Do I quiet the wild woman or do I conform? That's where this comes in. And the crystal for the wild woman is going to be the garnet. So that's the bright red one. One of the reasons I love garnet is because it is so powerful at using those surges that we have that run through our body for momentum. So garnet helps with the feminine flow of sexuality and passion, emotional balance, and understanding that a confident woman is actually the most beautiful woman. So it helps to boost that self-confidence. It also is known to increase the odds of finding soulmates and unconditional love. And I personally believe that we have lots of soulmates. In fact, if you're watching this, you might even be one of mine, because usually we find each other. And I think of them as soul friends, and we travel in groups and clusters and part of each other's tribe. And we always seem to find each other. Garnet helps finding that. It's interesting because these are just the tiniest little chips, but they have a lot of vibrational energy in them. They also help to soften the ability to work on that metaphysical plane. Sometimes when we get deep into spiritual work, it's really easy for us to retract and hold back and no longer want to be brave in the unknown. And garnet helps us to soothe a lot of that. So this is your fire, and not just fire, but your premortal fire. So the fire of who you are, how you're showing up, full expression. The wild woman is all about expression as much as possible. And what you're going to do with the garnet is you're actually going to create a circle around this little oval. Okay, it's an oval. So you can do an oval, or if you feel like you want to do more of a circle, you can do a circle. The idea is to encompass the earth and the fire in the circle with the wild woman. Okay, so you're going to place all the garnets in a nice little circle right here. If you shake up your board, all of them will get mixed up, but I have placed this crystal grid for myself just to get some clarity on this kit, and I was able to remove them and rebag them separately. But if you want to mix them all up and just do one big circle, absolutely you can. Once again, this is your grid. No one can tell you how to do it. So, okay, so that is our beautiful garnet. So the next one we're going to talk about is this water flow. And then we have the maiden, the long blonde hair with the flowers in it. This is our young maiden. So the maiden, oh, I love her. This is where we do a lot of our inner child work. So think of what are the things that you knew as a child that you maybe forgot when you grew up? The things you love to do, the things you love to play. If you think about it, how many times are we told that it's through the eyes of a child that the light is found, the righteous is found, the higher intuition and gifts are found? Because the children haven't learned how to be an adult yet and conform and shut off and box in. And especially if they haven't been abused, then they are more free to fully express. Although I can say as a child that was abused, I was still able to freely express a lot of myself. It was just private most of the time. So embracing the little girl dreams, embracing that innocence of the child. Sometimes it's really amazing at how many of us have been through horrible things and still are able to maintain our innocence. In fact, that's one thing that my sweetheart said was his most curious thing about me when we were first dating. He said, wow, just after all you've been through, how did you do it and not lose this innocence? Because I know so many people and they turn bitter and can take risks. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess it's learning to play. So pulling in that play element. The crystal that we're going to create a circle with is going to be the lapis. It's that throat chakra. It's the self-expression. I love lapis too because it especially helps with understanding who we are and where we come from. So in ancient Egypt, lapis was what the beautiful royalty wore. And it's interesting because you think of it, royalties, especially in Egypt, was known as being the voice of God. And so you have the voice of God wearing the stone of the throat and the voice. So I love that piece. Lots of self-expression, revealing inner truths. If you think of it like, kids say the funniest things. If you ask a kid to be honest, they're usually honest, and they're way more honest than you would like them to be, right? And so this is where you pull into that wisdom of, okay, what is my inner child saying? What is the maiden saying? The maiden's carefree. She doesn't have any babies yet. She's just playing. The world is taking care of her. She is receiving. She is playing. So pulling into that, what wisdoms can you gain by playing and receiving? Because oftentimes that's exactly what we're needing. And in this one, you're going to place the lapis in a circle around the outside of the garnet. So you have your amber, and then your opal, and then your garnet forming a circle, and then another circle on the outside is going to be the lapis. Okay. So then the next crystal and phase that we go through is our mother phase. The mother is going to be the black obsidian. Dun, 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 dun. That's your protective mama bear energy. And you're going to put it in a ring around the lapis. So black, blue, then red in the middle. And then this is going to be our fire. No. So this one is our grounding. This is our earth element. And for this one, it's our protection. It's our shield. It's our understanding. It's knowing that because of the things you know, you are protected. Because of the things you've learned. Yes, in the past you've been hurt, and yes, in the past you haven't been protected. And yes, in the past you probably wouldn't have done the things you did, but that's how you learn to do the things differently now. So what wisdoms have you learned that are now your protection, that are now your information that keeps you aligned and keeps you where you want to be? That's going to go in a circle around there. Also, it helps to block psychic attacks, block outside energies, just like if you think of like the mama grizzly bear, right? Like bears are so cute and cuddly, but if you have a mama and her cubs, don't mess with her, right? And so allowing yourself to pull into some of that. Also understanding what is it generationally that's been coming up that you get to break that cycle and be the protector for. So is there abuse that's been happening in your family line and it's time to stop with you? Even if it passed on to your children, maybe you can help educate them so it doesn't pass on to their children in grandma mode, right? And if you look at my family, even my generations, the women who immigrated, they immigrated as teenagers, even though they were mothers or mothers with teenagers, and went straight into polygamy. The females anyway. Yeah, I'm talking about the females, the matriarch line. And then they would go straight into abusive relationship after abusive relationship after abusive relationship. The interesting thing is I went from abusive relationship to abusive relationship to abusive relationship. And now I get to go, oh, hold on. Nope, we know our worth, we know our value, this is not happening anymore. And we can cut that cycle. And so, yes, of course I teach my children, and they may still choose the abusive relationship, but at some point I get to educate that, I get to share that. Even if I just share it with you, that's stopping at least one cycle from perpetuating. So what are the cycles? What are the loops that you've been staying on? Tuning into that, maybe asking for support and getting out of a loop. and writing it down. I would like some inner wisdom on how to break this loop, because one thing I have noticed is the generation of women that exist in our generation, you know, in the last, you know, there's like a 30-40 year range. I'm noticing a lot more. Each generation gets a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger. Like most of the women I interact with, we talk about, you know, things that we've experienced. And it's like, well, my mom was a doormat, and then her mom was just mean and a doormat, or her mom was even more of a doormat and not allowed to say anything. And so we've been slowly coming out and into our own and standing in our strength. And that's where the obsidian comes in. It's like, stand in who you are, full expression. If people don't like it and people have a problem with it, guess what? You're in your full expression, and at least you're creating some difference, some change, even if it's opposition, you're creating a contrast that will create a different outcome. You're not going to play this cycle anymore. Even if you choose wrong, you're choosing something different, and the cycle can't perpetuate. Isn't that amazing? The last one we are going to do for our kit is our clear quartz. Clear quartz is the heightener of intuition, that crown chakra, all of the wisdom coming in. It's also our grandmother. And when we're in grandmother phase or crone phase, that's when we actually have enough wisdom to share. And that's going to go along the outside, encompassing the whole circle of women inside. And that ties in with us. When our mother is in the womb of our grandmother, we are in the womb of our grandmother. There's a connection there. And as she's experiencing emotional things, we are experiencing emotional things. Emotions are energy in motion, which means that any emotion our grandmother felt while she was pregnant could be injected into our DNA and be a default emotion that we feel. Crazy to think of, right? But when we tune into our intuition and our knowing, we're able to start picking and filtering that out. What is mine? What is not mine? What is mine? What is not mine? Also, we're able to open that channel and funnel through the wisdom of our ancestors. It's interesting because we live in a time when you get old, you become a liability, you become inconvenient, a hindrance on society, where anciently you were revered as sacred. And you had seen so many things that you would be the person someone would go to for advice. And so pulling into some of that information that still exists within you of, I'm really good at giving some really good advice. Who should I connect with? How should I open up and express more of this inside of me? How can I give wisdom to myself or wisdom to others? What is it that I already have in there? And so that's going to go on the outside. It's really difficult sometimes if we don't have grandmothers that are living or mothers that are living, and we step into that matriarch role sometimes before we feel like we're ready. But then as we step into it, we realize, oh, I do know a lot. And these steps are not based on age. They're based on moments when we need to pull the different sides. Remember, there's 4. We have 4 directions we can pull from and access. And so that's what we're tuning into, is what element are you needing to pull from? Where are you needing to connect? And so for the clear quartz, we're actually using that air, that pulling in that intuition into our body, and inspiration flows all around, but it's a matter of taking it, organizing it, and claiming it that create it within us. So hopefully you are enjoying applying your crystal kit, putting all your magic out, and I would recommend doing your cacao ceremony with your crystal grid already placed. If you have any questions on how to set up your grid, please let me know. I can't wait to hear all the wisdoms that unfold by intentionally placing these crystals and tuning into each of these aspects of ourselves. The wild woman, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, because we all hold all of them. And it's not about one being better than the others. It's about fully encompassing all that we are, all that we're giving, and all that we need. Especially when we get into that mother element, sometimes we don't realize, oh, I need nurturing too. And we get to allow ourselves to have that nurturing. So allowing that full expression of all of it. I just love it. Thank you for doing your kit with me, and I can't wait to hear how it goes. Love you guys.